IVM.
Hello there.
Hi, Tash.
Good morning. Top of the morning to you.
Yes, top of the morning, and it's a bright and early Wednesday morning.
Yeah, beautiful weather. Mumbai is a bit chilly.
Don't lie like this.
I'm wearing a light sweater.
That doesn't mean anything. We're in the air-conditioned room. And we are joined by
A very special guest today on a very special episode.
Yes.
So given the current climate, we young people and old people and small people
Political
and everyone
climate.
living through, the country is in some kind of uproar. Many things are happening.
We're going through, a phase.
This is a major thing.
And it's going to be a turning point.
We get to witness and be part of at this age. I think it's like, it doesn't happen all the time. I don't think I guess maybe every generation does get to live through something big like
There's
that.
a word for this. I forgot it. It's like a certain period which is kind of like a fulcrum or a turning point after which history bends in another direction. And I think that's what we're kind of going through right now.
Interesting.
It kind of defines a new age political movement for our country, because I don't think we've seen something at this scale, at least as a 27-year-old.
No, we haven't,
I haven't
yeah.
really seen. Maybe the last thing was when AAP came and Anna Hazare did all like the Jhadu movement and the sit-in and the fasting and all of that.
Yeah.
That is, I think, to me, the last time I've remembered something where so many people were engaged on a national level. And then obviously the last two elections were a huge mobilization of people.
Yeah.
But that, again, wasn't so much a movement as it was just a practice of democracy. Having said that, you're right. We're in this hot water at the moment.
You're right. Actually, that's where we are at.
And we have a special guest to help us navigate said water.
Because today's station is about that. How to be a good, how to be a citizen.
How to be a citizen.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be how to be a good citizen, but
We're going to break it down to the real basics today. And
first we're going to teach you how to be a citizen. Then you'll be good, bad, we'll see.
Yeah. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my friend and a friend of the show now.
Yes.
Andre. Hello, Andre.
Hi guys, happy to be here. It's a very fun day to talk about fun things.
It is a fun day to talk about fun things. You have to think of this as fun, right? I was nervous before we started recording when I was psyched myself out. This is fun because this is the question of your country and your future.
And we're lucky enough to be in a
Able
place
to
where we
discuss
can
it.
talk about it and have it reach other people also. So it's great.
Yes, we would like to use this platform occasionally for good, as opposed to the Karan Johar episodes we do. So yeah, I hope you stick around and listen to the entire episode.
Andre and I met at Buzzfeed, and I want to tell everyone that Andre used to head something called Dialogue over there, which I love.
Yes.
And that's actually why I wanted Andre on this episode also.
He's
You want to tell our
also-
listeners a bit
I mean,
about...
Andre's a journalist, so
That's true. He has a pass, okay? A press pass.
don't tell us we don't do credible things.
Yeah, that was a great introduction. I'm really once this episode comes out, I'm going to frame that introduction. That was great. Yeah, I mean, I have been a journalist for about 8 years now. I did different forms of journalism. I started reporting, started writing and stuff earlier, then moved on to, BuzzFeed type reporting. And then I eventually started a channel called Dialogue on BuzzFeed, which covered a variety of topics, primarily politics, culture, social issues in and around India. And I would say that during, as well described by you guys, today's climate, we need more channels like Dialogue to kind of spread the information that the people need to know about what's happening around them.
Also in an accessible and understandable way.
In an easily digestible
Yeah.
way, yes.
Yeah, that's a
I
nice
think
way.
right now the way information is being spread is very convoluted and it's large jargon and people don't, at least India is a very young country. And
it's super polarized is what we've been discussing earlier as well.
Extremely.
So,
There are a lot of, the narratives are from different ends of the spectrum.
yeah. And spectrum being an important word, and we'll get into that.
We'll touch upon that.
But-
you want to signpost us
Yes,
on that
because
note?
we've been trying to do this, and
Ayushi loves structure, and structure including signposting.
it's 2020. I'm not embarrassed of liking structure and research anymore.
Do
I
tell.
have been, and now I'm not. So we're going to start the episode by just decluttering and
Untangling, unpacking
the entire CAA, NRC, and NPR issue, because they are three separate things, but when brought together, what that means. So we're going to
get the facts.
Yeah, kind of separate those issues. And then as well, in terms of the protests that are happening, why different factions in different parts of the country are protesting for different reasons and how they can come together for a larger change/good. After that, we're going to get into what our personal involvement and personal relationship with this time period has been and what it's meant to us and what we've been able to do. After which, we're going to discuss what we think the future looks like and a couple of top tips from the three of us on how to navigate the next phase, because it's super important and we always appeal to our listeners as intelligent, informed, and
thinking baby adults.
Yes, and people who want to become better.
Yeah.
And we hope that this along the way is just informative. And obviously, let us know how we did.
We love your feedbacks and DMs and love.
You know me, guys. Love me DMs.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it. Andre, do you want to kick us off with just a little bit of like a table of CA, NPR, NRC?
Sure. So the NRC is something that was happening already, technically, in Assam and the Northeast and stuff like that. And essentially, it's a citizenship register. And it's to confirm the citizenship of the people living there, and also to kind of not take away citizenship, but like kind of measure the citizenship of people who have come in illegally from the borders and stuff like that.
Right.
Now, that was one part of it. The CAA is something that came out, which is essentially, it was a bill and then became an act. It's a citizenship, again, related to citizenship and stuff like that. And it came into the limelight because it seemed like the first act that was based on religious intolerance. It ostensibly grants citizenship to a number of religions: Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, etc., who would be coming in from 3 neighboring countries, all of whom are majority Muslim populated countries. So Muslims were left out of that register, out of that act. So this was essentially a refugee bill. Now, on paper, obviously, any refugee bill will be good. We're giving people a safe haven, we're getting them into a country, trying to get them back on their feet and stuff like that. Again, separate entity on its own. Sure,
it's not as demonic as it can be portrayed to be. If you were just to read it as a bill for a refugee status.
As a standalone thing, it seemed like a good kind of thing. Now, the problem is that it was in the BJP's manifesto a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it's something that we could have contested earlier. It's something that we should have caught earlier. And why we should have caught it is because it gets paired with the NRC. Now, the NRC is the National Register for Citizenship. And that is something that Amit Shah has said will happen pan-India. Now, if it happens pan-India, it basically delegitimizes the citizenship of all Indians until you prove your citizenship.
Right.
Now, again, everyone will have to prove with whatever documents, ancestry papers, stuff like that. Now, when paired with the CAA, if you're, say, Hindu, Christian, Sikh, Buddhist, you will get a little bit of a free pass. So whatever documents you can provide will be able to prove your citizenship. But if you're Muslim, you don't fall under the CAA, which means that you have to ostensibly prove that you are a citizen, and the government doesn't care whether they have to prove that you are a citizen.
Right.
You yourself have to prove citizenship. Even if you have a voter ID, or even if you have a PAN card, or even if you have an Aadhaar card, a passport, you have to prove documents like birth certificates of you, your parents, your grandparents. You have to prove ancestry documents like land holdings, stuff like that. And in a country as diverse as India, how do people that don't have access to these documents prove that? How do people who live in small towns in rural areas, how do people who have been, I don't know, they can't afford houses, and they are living like basically out of like slums and huts and smaller accommodations. How do they prove that they own anything? The whole point of this combination of factors is a large majority of the population will not be able to prove their documentation, will not be able to prove that they are citizens of the country. And therein lies the problem.
And additionally, when you were listing those, that list of documents in terms of what you can use to prove your citizenship and what you can use to register for this national registry, even when you were going through that, it's not completely clear which ones will do for which person, because we know from past experience, as well as a discussion we were having earlier, is that even when it came to Aadhaar, which was supposedly a very similar exercise and something that the country got behind because, okay, fine, it was for a certain reason, and it was just to create that national, again, registry of citizens. And I feel bad for using those words, but they're apt. When we were doing that, different people in the same city had different requirements to register for the Aadhaar.
Yes.
Like you were at a station, at a polling booth or whatever.
Yeah, at the registry station.
Yeah.
I was in Bandra, and I brought, my dad was really paranoid, so he was like, we'll take all the documents that we have. So we took almost everything, and they were exclusively asking for passport. Like, they didn't want your electricity bill, or they didn't want anything else. They wanted your passport. They looked at that one document and they were like, okay, chalega. And
so see, you did that, and
nobody asked to see my passport.
I did it on, and I did it near Marine Drive. CCI was doing it at the time because that was a center for them to do it at. And I did it on my driver's license and the telephone bill, because my family went together to do it, obviously. Yeah. And so we did it together, and we sat in that booth and took pictures and everything, biometrics.
Right.
And the fact is, we did all of that once. Like, you can't ask us to come. It's such a pain. But again, what is asked of you, me, and Tash should have been ideally the same thing.
It should have ideally. Yeah. But this is what happens when you have this process itself. Like, if they do get the NRC, when they do get the NRC throughout the entire country, it's going to be done at such a massive level that obviously it's going to be done at a district, city, state. It's going to be done at various levels. And
that's just talking about cities. Then you have to go into taluka and zilla and this and all these.
Extremely small. Yeah, it's going to be extremely micro. And the problem is that the governing body conducting that session in that specific area, because there's no, consensus on what exactly should be asked, they can ask for anything.
And they can also reject based on anything. That's actually the counter.
And that's the fear, right? Like, if, say, Amit Shah has said on television that none of these documents are going to be valid, then what is? I used my voter ID to vote you into power. Yeah. So then what?
How can you nullify this?
Yes, if majority of the citizens did vote for the BJP to be in power.
No. Majority of citizens voting for a certain party in our country does not matter, as is seen in our state. That is a different issue altogether.
Yeah.
But you're right. How can you, just in terms of a logical chain of thought, if you are invalidating the thing that brought you to power, then that invalidates your ascent to power.
It doesn't make sense. And if there is a case for, so this is where the NPR comes in, the National Population Register, which is basically going to, it's an earlier form of consensus. It's already information that the government has about a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the government stance, which technically makes sense, is that it's outdated data. Like, you need to kind of update that.
But we're coming up on a census, aren't we?
We're always coming up on a census, apparently.
Yeah. It happens every 10 years, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know.
Okay, this I should have checked. I feel really bad. But we are coming up on a census.
Behind the counting of every person in this country, I'd just like to say there are many of us. It would be nice to have an actual idea that really 1.3 billion, or have we gone up? I'm pretty sure we have.
We've gone up, but also a census is important for a multitude of other reasons than just getting a number. It includes demographic information and a breakdown which affects the way policy is made and the way that policy will be implemented. It affects what counts as a minority versus a majority. It affects your economic and agricultural reforms on a huge scale. So I am absolutely not against a census or a registry of citizens and their existence, because that is important for a lot of things.
Agreed. The only problem is that it depends on what data you're collecting.
Exactly.
And in the proposed, the NPR and the NRC and stuff like that, the data that they want to collect seems to be way above understanding the demographic of the country and understanding how policy and the economy and all of that should work based on, target demographics and stuff like that. It's very personal information. It's information that honestly the government shouldn't have. But if we get into all of that, it's going to be a whole privacy issue, and that's separate. The whole point
is a different
of
episode. You come next week.
This is a very different episode, right? But I think that the major so the bill is there, the register is there, the Olio census is there. What I think is happening right now in the country is an explosion of information.
Yeah.
Right. It's
we are drowning.
For veteran journalists, for veteran lawyers, it's very difficult for them to even like go through all the things that are happening, because right now there are statements.
How do you expect citizens to navigate
and this? Is veteran
lawyers. You're saying
agree.
Veteran, like as an educated person, I'm reading all this stuff and I'm like, yo, this is first of all a lot. Secondly, it's a complete like they've conflated the issue in a way where you're mixing it all up and no one is being able to pull out what's actually the problem, where it's going to lead us down the road. None of that is happening. So you're just hearing a lot of noise. And if a person who, like myself, has to really wade through it to find out what's the actual issue and the mudda, as Rytasha likes to say, how do you expect someone who's not educated and who doesn't have the time to go through this and to understand how this affects
the luxury
him or her?
also to take that time out. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I agree. I think that when everything came out in the start, there was just a whole mess of information. No one really understood it. I'm not saying no one really understood it, but it was very difficult to understand it. And now I feel like it's getting better. It's a little more streamlined. People are putting out very standard lay explainers of, hey, this is the thing that's happening.
Yeah.
This is how it'll affect you and stuff like that. But I still honestly see, and I'm talking from a point of privilege coming from Bombay, internet access, everything at my fingertips. I still see people who are like, I don't understand the issue, so I don't want to comment about it. I don't want to talk about it. And I feel like therein lies the problem. Like, you see something slightly complicated and you don't want to, if you have the privilege to understand what it is, you should. I like the point that you brought up of everything kind of coming into one, where there are lots of things happening.
Yeah.
So
we should just quickly touch upon that as well. Is that why different protests in different parts of the country might have a different route? They've kind of come to the same place now.
Yes.
But they started at different places. And I think it's very, very important to understand why different states are protesting different things.
Yeah.
Because that will help you navigate and understand the issue at heart much better.
I agree.
Because we are a very, very diverse country. No two states relate to this bill in the same exact way. Because, again, each state has their own minority and majority populations. And the way that they take care of them or pander or cater to them is very different.
It is. And I think that the point that you brought up, us being a very large country, it's too diverse for anyone to be confused with, like, it's not an issue against corruption, right? No. Everyone's against corruption. That's a very standard, get it. But this issue, say for instance, in Assam and the Northeast and stuff like that, it's obviously they don't want the bill, but they don't want it for specific reasons.
Yes.
They don't want to, kind of dilute the indigenous and like the tribal communities there, which again is a fight that is theirs and has been going on for a while.
Years.
Yeah, for a while. And say for instance, there's obviously like internet shutdown and stuff happening in Kashmir. That again is a separate kind of issue. And say for instance, for the NRC and the CAA coming into the rest of the country, it has become a fight against obviously religious intolerance and stuff like that. And also, how can a government kind of delegitimize citizens and then make them prove their citizenship?
Yeah.
And I think the one tent that's holding all of this together, like you can put all of this under an umbrella, is the right to freedom, your democratic right, your fundamental rights to, one, protest and question the government, and to understand your rights and to be able to actively use your rights to experience democracy and to experience freedom. I think that's the one umbrella that's holding all of these together.
Right.
And the problem is that, I mean, it's not necessarily a problem, but it's the thing that's happening, is that all of these are pushed together and everyone's getting confused about who's fighting for what issue. Now, it's not like I'm not fighting for Kashmir or I'm not fighting for the Northeast or I'm not fighting the rest of India or whatever it is. But when you kind of align all of these things together, it gets muddled. And say
It's
a
a
lay
mixed
citizen
message
trying to
coming
figure
out.
out, oh, what is happening in the country, will suddenly read Kashmir and suddenly read Delhi and then suddenly read
JNU
Assam
and then Assam, and you're like,
gets super confused about the issue because sometimes it is a slightly conflicting issue.
yes.
And like I've overheard people kind of say that, oh, CAA is good, dude, like it's helping people here and there and stuff like that. And then they're talking about one protest somewhere else, but confusing it with an issue that's happening somewhere else. And then assuming that the bill is going to help those people.
No, and the explanation of this khichdi that is going on, I think, is, in my opinion, the thing that's going to stop us from getting to a point of actual change. It's going to not
Yeah.
stop. It's going to be the speed bump in the road there.
Right.
And I think because we're not streamlined or clear about the direction of where we want this to go and what we expect in terms of change from the government,
Yeah.
it's going to become problematic when it comes to like, okay, now you have a platform to speak. You have the nation's ear. What is it that you are going to say?
Right. I mean, I think that a lot of people are clear on one thing. They don't want the CAA and they don't want the NRC to happen.
Correct.
That across the board, through all the protests, through all the
Right.
states, they don't want it to happen. Again, what we just discussed was their reasonings for not wanting
Is
it to
different,
happen
yes.
is different. It's important to understand that. But it's also important to understand that, like you said, what do we do? What can we kind of focus on to make things better? So far, it seems that whether we like it or not, this thing is going to
Go
happen.
ahead.
It's been passed, it's live, it's going to happen over the next 3 or 4 years is a big, it's going to be a point of a lot of contention. It's going to be a point of a lot of firsts for India, and it's going to be a lot of things that happen. And there are a lot of state elections coming up.
Yeah.
All of that's going to play into everything. My whole thing is right now, I just urge people to kind of read about it.
Yes.
Like I know there's a lot out there. I know it's very difficult, but come on, like we watch Netflix shows with very confusing timelines and we read and watch the explainer videos right after it.
Yeah.
That's
a
a way.
really good way of telling people, like, watch one less episode, man.
I mean, like I think the last show I saw was The Witcher, and I watched like 19 videos to kind of explain things I already kind of knew about The Witcher. Like it was not a difficult show to understand, but I still did kind of go ahead and whatever. This is your country. This is something you should
this is your
care
home,
about.
and there's people on the street fighting for a certain reason, and I think it's your fundamental duty to get behind and understand why people are angry, because you've never seen this large scale kind of dissent being registered at the government.
It's huge.
I think we should talk about the protests a little bit. Like I don't think we've touched upon
No,
it
not
yeah,
at
of
all.
course.
in this. I do think that what's happening right now. So one thing I realized was when the CAA came out, sure, people were angry. There were protests, and some, I would say, in my bubble, like I saw a lot of like anger and anguish and like what is happening. But I think the first time I saw like a real like spark from all over was when the violence started happening in the universities. When it happened in Jamia and happened in Aligarh and JNU and in various universities. So far, by my last count, around 200 cities around India have held protests.
Yes, anti-CAA.
Anti-CAA. And this is not even it's against the CAA and the NRC. And that's not 200 protests, that's 200 cities in which multiple protests have happened.
Yes.
And my only issue is that the reigning government has spoken, once or twice about it. Not really acknowledging.
It's such a large scale of.
It is massive. I'm actually surprised that their spokesperson is not every day kind of giving more information.
But that is the politics of it, right? The more you decide to not give it importance or credence, the more your voter base is also going to kind of dismiss it. Because if I'm saying, look, you have to call a spade and know why they are talking to you the way they are.
Agreed.
I think that's so important, is to understand that politics is a mental game. There is a strategy involved. And if you as a citizen think that these sort of acts and laws are being made arbitrarily, then disillusion yourself of that idea. They've been done with a strategy in the sense that they've played it out in a timeline that's convenient to them.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I think they've done, when you say strategy, I feel like we're kind of underplaying how
much
brilliantly
it's been played out.
kind of done, yeah.
And I think if you want to hide from that and be like, no, they don't know what they're doing, they're just uneducated. Yeah. That's all fine. That's all great. But they're getting it right every single step of the way for themselves. And so you have to be one step ahead of the game in recognizing when you are being conned or when you are being lied to or you're being specifically ignored, because that is what dismisses you in the national eye.
Yeah, I think that a lot of, when these protests happen, I am a journalist, but I would say like, I'm not afraid to say it. I feel like the state of Indian media right now is quite bad in terms of like no one's really giving you actual facts and information, whether it be a right-leaning paper, whether it be a left-leaning, whatever it is. There's always like it either leans far right or it either leans far left, and there's no like centered argument. I'm not saying there is few.
Yeah.
There are good publications out there who are doing pretty solid journalism, but I would say for the masses, like something like The Wire or Scroll or any of these places also are not necessarily what they're reading. Like they're watching Z News or they're watching Aaj Tak or like something like that. And those, I mean, the credit to the BJP IT cell, like they're so good. Like that army is something out of Mr. Robot. Like it's unbeatable. There's a thing that happens, it's not in very good light of the ruling party.
Yeah.
And then in an hour or two, something pops up that not only counters it, but batters it into the ground. And it's the top trending topic on Twitter.
That's
and
insane.
It's almost organic growth because the cell is so large. And I just, in all my years, like Rytasha said, I used to work for Buzzfeed. I've created viral content before. I've created massively viral content. But in all my years of virality, I've never seen something like this. This is, I need to sit in there.
Yeah, and we need to learn a thing or two, you know.
We have to do a post-mortem with the BJP IT cell and kind of learn how they did this.
How can we make
so
Agla
massively.
Station Adulthood also go viral?
Oh, dear Lord. We do get, I think we do have listeners from across the political spectrum, though, because I think when we had put out some, at least when I had put out some opinions in terms of when the just in whatever, that were they were anti-BJP or anti the center. And I got a lot of those DMs of like, you know what you're talking about, you're just like a liberal left-leaning. And then there were the worst ones, which was more abusive. And then I was like, wow, I got my first troll. I was so excited. But can you imagine the reach of social media? And you're right, in terms of their IT cell being able to dismantle any steps forward by just being like, no, but we are going to now create this new stage and take over this movement and take over the attention.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, my perspective is just basically, in my opinion, why people started why it became so big, like the protest became so big, why the anguish became so big on social media is because Delhi had internet. Like, we weren't seeing so much because there's an internet shutdown, or at least at the time there was an internet shutdown in the Northeast. There wasn't people to show you what was happening in Assam and stuff like that. We still don't know exactly how the people were treated and stuff like that. Because the NRC was fully implemented there. Like, there were detention camps being built and
they've done it in the state before. There was a huge error list, and that's a whole other thing that we should have talked about it, but I think that's pretty much in the news. Everyone knows that it was implemented once. And
1.9 million were left out of the registry. And and
by the way, the majority of that left out were actually Hindu population.
Yeah.
Just want to put it out there.
Yeah, which is a fair point. That's the point. Like all piece of information should be as they are, not colored by specific this thing. And like, I truly believe people are smart enough to kind of understand what's happening and smart enough to not care if the thing is happening.
You have very high
expectations
from people, aren't
My point is, you either understand it and you care about what's happening, or you understand it and you don't care what's happening. But I don't believe there are people out there who don't know what's happening.
I think there are people who choose not to know what's happening.
Yeah, I
like
agree.
You've made that active choice.
Exactly.
To be
apolitical.
Okay. Well, on that thought note, let's take a quick break.
We'll slip into a break.
And then we're going to come back and talk about our personal experiences.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, why aren't you? Please do. It's very important. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Would also like to thank our sponsors, Storytel and Intel. I also just wanted to add a brief note to our listeners. We've recently changed some of our show's hosting platforms, and if you're having any issues with your subscriptions, please do resubscribe to the shows and everything should work fine from there. We have a little bit of an announcement to make. Our Kannada podcast Thale Harate turns 50 episodes old this week. Alok Prasanna Kumar and Saryu Natarajan of the Ganatantra podcast joined Pawan for a 3-episode special as they discussed the CAA, NRC, and the freedom to protest in episodes 50, 51, and 52. So if you speak Kannada, why aren't you listening to that show? Also on Cyrus Says this week, Cyrus is joined by stand-up comedian and winner of the Mrs. India Earth pageant, Deepa Javeri. They talk about what goes behind the scenes at a beauty contest, how she entered comedy at a late stage in life, and how her family views her career choices. On Advertising is Dead, Varun sits down with longtime friend, photographer, and filmmaker Avinash Jay Singh. They talk about Avinash's process while on shoots, how he likes working with smaller teams if possible, and how advertising has changed for filmmakers and photographers in this internet age. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh are joined by Kushal Bhagia, CEO of First Check. They take a look at the world of venture capital and discuss how a VC firm works. On 9XM Soundcast, Eva is joined by composer duo Salim and Suleiman. They talk about how to produce a great Bollywood score and their upcoming projects. On Simplified, Chuck, Shriketh and Tony continue with part 3 of the 2019 recap. Join them as they talk about climate activism, China and India's political landscapes. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks about how we as a society have lessened twisting and turning of our spine as a whole and why it's important to do so. On Litnama, Lakshmi is joined by spoken word poet Jackie Thakkar, who talks about the expanding scene of spoken word today, the impact it creates, and the monetization required for these new art forms. On Hedges and Sludges, host DJ Ashwin and Varun talk about the India versus Sri Lanka match in Guwahati, 4-day test matches, the Cricinfo Cricketer of the Year, Hardik Pandya's engagement, and a whole lot more. On What a Player, Siddharth and Mikhail run down their sports predictions for this year, that is 2020. Listen in for educated predictions in the world of cricket, tennis, football, and darts. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
Welcome back from that little break. I'm in the studio with Ayushi and Andre.
No, this sounded like a radio host.
I am. That's all. Now I will step back and let them talk.
No, Tash, this is silly. And I get irritated when you do this. But on that exact irritation point, I'm going to ask you, what has been your personal kind of relationship or feeling towards this entire time
period that we're living
through?
Okay, I'll start at the start.
Where else would you start?
I will preface it by saying I come from a very right-leaning household. The ideology and like my parents just love the government. I'm shaking as I speak. I've been conflicted on many levels because firstly you're dealing with this information overload like we discussed, and as thinking educated people you don't know what to believe, and I've just been like, I'm at a point in my life where I feel so scared that I can't trust anyone. Like the government though, of course, in general, like I think citizens across the world will be like, we don't trust no government, everyone is a liar. And that's like the feeling that is like inside every cell of my body right now, because I'm just scared and I don't know who to trust and I don't know who to believe.
Trust me.
Yeah, Ayushi, I trust in you.
Believe me.
Now she's whispering into my ear and your ear. But yeah, that's where it all started out for me. I'm just going to talk about my feelings as usual. That's what you asked anyway.
This is every episode of the show. It's just me being like, we should dissect this. And Rytasha's like, but I feel these feelings.
And I would like to represent all the people who maybe are not thinkers but are deep feelers, right, and how it affects them also. Yeah. Like we may not be able to contribute intellectually, but like experientially and feelingly, we are all together with you and everyone. Everyone is feeling things, which is not a very articulate way of explaining it. But I remember when things had started out, there were tensions running high in my own home. And that for me was the biggest like kick in my butt and in my gut, both. Because I was like, damn. I'm like, imagine this is happening in an apartment in Mumbai city, educated family, father's a doctor, child is a successful, whatever, young adult or whatever.
Blue tick?
हाँ blue tick, yes जी. And हमारे घर में इतना tension चल रहा है when we actually love each other, great happy family, but still we are in a tension mahal. Imagine outside this apartment where, let's say, people don't love each other that much. There is no bond of family. And I'm like, imagine the tensions over there. And of course, it has crept into everyone's personal lives.
Professional lives as well.
Professional lives, and you can't escape it. And that's when I have always been on this fence of, यार दुनिया तो है ही खराब, कलयुग चल रहा है, हम अच्छे कर्म करेंगे and all that bullshit. I'm on this other spiritual path always, which does not serve. And now I have understood that, you know what, Rytasha, you can feel whatever you want to feel and you can experience everything, but you have to try to understand to the best of my abilities.
Yeah.
And do whatever best I can, which is not a lot. It's really not a lot. And I look at people going out there and doing so many things and putting their heart and soul and time and energy, and I salute them, but I can't do that much. And so now I'm taking these baby steps for myself, and that's where I'm at, and that's how I feel. I feel fearful, but also hopeful, because I've never seen something so massive happen in my life and in my time in India. And I've been in India since 3rd standard. So I can't also say that I did grow up here, but have had a very Western childhood, I suppose. And only in the last maybe 4 or 5 years since I became a working adult have I started to understand the country.
Right.
And this is another learning point for me, where I'm like, oh, I get to understand this country a little better and maybe finally play my part for the next whatever decade, because now in 10-15 years it's going to be us that's going to be the generation or whatever of real adults, and then
no pressure,
what's going to happen then? So we have to start prepping from now. And yeah, I'm changing my mindset, guys. I'm trying my best.
2 things. First of all, beta, you are best. Second of all, so 3 things. Second of all, trying is all that we can request and ask of anyone, any citizen in general, worldwide, I think. Yeah. And third, we will still have this podcast 10 years from now as adults, so keep listening in, guys.
Yeah.
Just holding on to my listenership base.
Okay, I spoke for many minutes now.
No, but I think there's not a single thing that you said that I disagree with, or that I find wrong, or that I have a problem with. And usually we always have something that we're like, I don't think so. But what you said is right. I think there's a lot of people who even talk about the mental health aspects of living through an age like this, where there's so much of dissent or violence or turmoil around you, that it does start to take a toll on yourself.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, Dre, may I call you Dre?
Yeah.
I just took a chance.
Yeah, we're friends now. I told you.
Oh my God. Guys, he's also blue tick. Just as you know, my obsession with collecting blue tick people. JK, but Andre, what is the same question? What would be
mine is a little more, so I'm very actively involved in creating content to spread awareness about what's happening in the country. Also attending protests. I'm involved with speaking to some of the organizers of the protests. I can't remember a time over the last month or so where in my spare time I'm not trying to read something more about what's happening.
Absolutely.
I think one word from what you said really struck me is there's violence and there's turmoil and there's dissent and all of that jazz. And I think that one word that is true for every single situation in every single home right now is tension. I think everyone feels something has changed.
Yeah.
It's not like how it used to be few months ago. And I think that itself is scary, worrisome. It is, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Whether what's going to happen is exactly what will play out, which is CAA, NRC, all of that jazz happening. I can't help but think about people from the marginalized community or from the trans community, people who live in smaller areas who can't provide paperwork. I, as a person living in Bombay, who's lived all my life in Bombay, I'm not sure what kind of paperwork I can provide.
Yeah.
So if I have that fear, I can't even imagine what it's like to live for the next 4 years thinking at some point during these 4 years, I might not be a citizen of the country I grew up in.
Yeah.
And that to me is very heartbreaking, very stressful. I think that what you said about this collective feeling that you have, where you're sitting in your house and you're seeing a protest happen, you're seeing violence happen, and I don't know how to describe it, but I know everyone in the country is feeling it. I know everyone's there's this unconscious, mass thing that's happening. And everywhere I look, there's tension. That feeling is very difficult to describe it. It's the first time I'm seeing it.
But it's
also in my
palpable.
life.
Like it's.
Oh yeah, no,
it's,
for sure.
It is.
Mahal garam hai. Quite literally.
Yeah.
I mean, I do see. I think we were talking about this a little earlier, and one strong ray of hope is the students. Like they've become the face of the the movement and the face of this thing. And I'm like, I don't think I would have had that, like the courage they have.
Guts.
Like when I was in college, of course the Bombay college.
What
like,
were we doing? Just enjoying like anything.
Like enjoying, playing football and going to the canteen. And these students are like standing up for what they believe in. Kind of educating the rest of the country, and that is really commendable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, world over, the students in general, there is a lot of student
uprising.
Yeah,
there
which is so inspiring also, because honestly, they have the time and the mental bandwidth, and they have that Jawani ka Josh, which I love.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I was like, did I have that when I was a kid? I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, my whole feeling right now is general anxiety and worry. And that's possibly because, so there are different levels of like being involved in this thing, right? I'm not even saying I'm at like a very high level. I'm just at like a very, what I can do, I'm doing. And I know a lot of people who are very actively like, involved in protests or like petitioning it in court or like reporting on the ground. And I can't even imagine what they're going through. Like I'm really hoping and praying that therapists out there are being as understanding and accommodating as possible. Because it's just going through this kind of time and being on the front lines for those people. We're going back to our jobs and like going back to our homes today, and this is their job and this is their home. They're on the ground. People who are sitting at protests for 4 or 5 days. Women who are taking time off from everything. I think women also have become a very strong symbol, and that is...
You are collectively welcome.
I mean, it's just... Like, if everyone kind of binds together with these symbols in mind, I think that I hope there is something in the future that will kind of alleviate all of this. Supreme Court, please come through. The courts are probably the last bastion of this democracy left, in my opinion. I think that the Supreme Court, the High Courts are actually doing a pretty decent job. Supreme Court, they're taking their time, but I'm hoping they come through in the end.
Ayushi, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, but I've been very nervous to share them.
No, man, it's a safe space.
Inside here,
everywhere is a safe space. I also lie.
Tere muh mein ghee shakkar. I hope that that's the future that we're working towards. I think for me, again, everything that both of you have said has been very valid, and I think it's absolutely right. Like, tension is the right word, I think, to pinpoint what's generally the atmosphere currently. The fact that students are taking over and kind of commandeering what we or the generation above us has not been able to do or have not been inclined to do, and they're taking it on. I think that's incredibly commendable. And you're right. When I was a student, you can be rest assured I was not doing this. I was not registering any kind of dissent. I was just consenting to everything. I was like, this? Yeah, I'll do it. Having said that, like, I studied politics at university. I studied like international relations and politics. And since I was a young girl, actually, I thought that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in politics. Ironically, my dream was to work in the White House. I was like, I see HRC, that's what I want to do. And so, after studying and then coming back and being part of the Indian diaspora, as well as the Indian subcontinent's population now, and having grown up here, I have tried my level best to be politically engaged or politically aware from a young age.
Yeah, Ayushi is my most politically aware friend.
And that's because I've had a genuine interest in it. So I'm not saying this in a way like, everyone should be doing the same. I don't think that's fair or needed.
Fair.
But I think that was my interest, so I kind of delved into it. Another thing is, because I work in commodities, and I've said it before, and not because I work in commodities, but because I work in an industry that's not confined to the cities, I get to travel a fair amount across the country in a lot of the smaller places, a lot of industrial areas, a lot of developing states, and, obviously the hinterlands also, as they call it. It's not just the cities, not just tier 1 and tier 2. And over the last 2 years, I've kind of made that effort to speak to people and understand who they voted for and why. just to kind of understand why, because I think that makes
Right.
you understand your brethren better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the answers that come in, a majority of the answers are related to, sadly, very basic things. It still comes down to roti, makan, kapda for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
the next thing that you see is their priority for their children. Like what's going to be the best thing for their kids to get education, sanitation, and healthcare.
Right.
Now, when you speak to these people who live kind of end to end and like hand to mouth existences, they are not concerned with these bigger looming issues of democracy, of the constitution, of your right and your duty and your fundamental guarantees as a citizen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you wash away their existence or their experience because they are not as mad or engaged as you are.
Right.
They don't have the bandwidth to do it. And I think it is unfair to expect that of these people, or to expect that of anyone who doesn't have the ability to get involved. And I'm talking again not from the city folk, I'm talking about the majority of our population. So having seen and spoken to these people, you understand why they voted the way they did. Because they saw very immediate results. And we spoke about this earlier, Andre, that the reason why people voted for the current party in the first round of elections back in 2014 was because, A, there was a lot of just anger at the previous government.
Yeah, there were bad conditions.
It was a terrible situation that we were left in. And you were kind of in that, like, if not them, then who?
Yeah.
Right? And then you had the first term where there seemed to be a lot of progressive change or change
Potential
towards
results,
potential. Yeah. And acts and laws that were enacted to be like, oh, this is going to help the vast majority of people in this way. So you saw why people did what they did.
Yes.
Which is why when I see people getting so outraged now, I am not surprised. I'm kind of more like, you woke up today and you decided to make this decision to get involved.
Yeah.
But that should not be the only starting point.
Right.
You need to look backwards and understand why we are here and why we have reached this point and agreed it's not a great place. And we have a lot of work to do together collectively. But do not negate the history of why we are here. Because if you do, you're negating the experience of the people that have voted and have brought us to this current stage.
Yeah.
And yes, the future is in our hands and it is our job to be more engaged. It is our job to be more aware. And not just job, it is your duty. I don't care. I'm going to say it. It is your duty to be more aware citizens. Because if you expect from your government, you have to give it that as well.
Yeah.
But my appeal is that this is going the way it should go. We will demand change as is our right. We should record your dissent and your disdain or dislike for the government. It's your right to put it out there, but make sure that it's about the government and not the people.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of times it came down to like talking to people who support the current government or who have voted for the certain reasons that they have. I know so many good, wholesome, truthful, honest, hardworking people who made the decision that they did. And then when you see the kind of vitriol that's being spewed oh God, I hate this word to say both sides. I hate it because it's, where it's coming from. It's coming from this Trump-esque ideology of giving credence to all forms of violence, which I'm not for. But when you just look at someone and their voter ID and their voter choice and you're like, that defines who you are and everything that you stand for, you're going to alienate your brother. You're going to alienate your sister. You're going to alienate your mother and your father and your neighbor and your co-worker and the farmer that puts the food on your plate and the labor that kind of carries it to the port and the industrial worker who is making sure that there is cement for the infrastructure in this country. And I know that this is sort of seeming like an appeal to the lowest common denominator, but that's where the country is. And if you want to get that part of the country back up to where you are, you have to have the ability to have a normal, balanced discussion as to why it's important for him or her to care about these issues.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a responsibility of the right, the left, the center, and everyone in between to just be like, and this is so simplistic, to say that let's just listen. Let's just have a conversation about why this is important to you and me. And it goes back to what you said earlier, that NRC and CAA and all of this, it's not just Hindu Muslims. It's not just right and left. It's going to affect all of us, right?
Yeah.
That's what the NRC does. It takes away all our rights and then we have to reprove all of them together.
Yes. And it's different levels of effect,
Yeah.
but it will affect you.
Exactly. So if it's going to affect all of us, we have to have the conversation with all of us.
Yeah.
If it's just all of us lefties sitting in a room and being like, this sucks and this is my right and this is my prerogative,
Yeah.
nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
Because I can assure you the right is sitting doing the same thing, and as we've known, more effectively.
Very, very effectively.
So my appeal from this entire episode, and to not to you guys, but to anyone who's listening, is if you voted a certain way, understand why you did.
Yeah.
And fine, you did it. It was your right, and that's your choice.
Yeah. And the follow-up to that
Yeah.
would be and it's okay to change your mind
Yes,
now.
that was my next sentence.
Which is where the
Absolutely.
educating of oneself comes.
Yeah. And I actually know a lot of people who used to be pretty big BJP supporters and are now, I won't say they're turning the tide, they're not changing their minds or anything, but they're curious about the other side.
Right.
So they want to learn more. So they're asking me for articles to okay, this happened, can you show me some write-up about it so that I can learn more and this and that. And if, say, from conversation A to conversation B, C, D,
There's
by
change.
D, there's a lot of change.
There's evolution of thought.
Yeah, there's at least there's he wants to know more. He wants to understand more. And he's
Which
like,
I
I
think
don't agree with that thing.
is the
And
key.
that is, yeah, that's really important. I feel like you're right. It is the left talking to the left and they're like, we know, yaar.
Yeah,
How much
exactly.
you'll tell me the same thing, I know. But reaching out and kind of understanding other people's perspectives, I really like how you put it, which is exactly, it's like you voted a certain way and then you get pegged as a certain thing and then it's just...
What, you're cancelled. This
Cancel
cancel culture.
culture and stuff like that. And I get it, there are
Yeah.
Twitter is the worst place for that, right? Twitter,
It's a
I get
scum
it.
of the earth.
Yeah, cancel everyone on Twitter.
Come join us there.
But in real life, when you're talking to your friends and your co-workers and your parents and your relatives, and I know this is a big thing, WhatsApp groups have become war zones now.
Oy.
And this though happens during any time of political turmoil, but now more than ever, I have friends who are like, should I leave it? And it's, I don't know. I don't know how to answer this for you.
I have been telling my parents since before all this also, because they believe anything on WhatsApp. And I'm like, just you have to verify this. It's not real. It's not news on WhatsApp. Somebody has sent you a forward.
We started this thing in our larger family group, which includes multicultural, multi-continental family members.
Yes.
Because, as a Gujarati, we are just
Everywhere.
looking to go everywhere and spread. No, they're all very nice, successful people, huh? The level of engagement that you're seeing from people who are not in the country as opposed to the ones who are is what disturbs me the most. Is
Yeah.
because again, the information that's reaching outside is so polarized, either by right or by left, that they don't have any idea of what is truly the problem anymore, or what is it that the students are fighting for? What are we as a collective group advocating for?
So you're saying that people outside still they don't understand the issue.
Yeah, I think they just make it we are for CA or we're anti-CA, and you're like, no, babies, it's not about that anymore. This is about, a sort of a culmination of many acts and bills coming together, which is going to create a cluster 5 years from now.
I think that within the population also there's a lot of, we already spoke about how there's, just so many, there's a dumpster and all the media is throwing reports into it and then it's on fire. But everyone's just throwing
fire.
Everyone's just throwing their own this thing.
Also, that dumpster is really hard to find and you can't really reach. It's so many things.
It is. And I think that again, it's very well to speak on Twitter and very well to publish articles on the internet and stuff like that, but half the country though doesn't have internet right now. I'm not half the country, but a lot of places in the country do not have internet. Secondly, in smaller places, and I know that India has become way, way, way better in terms of internet in various places and people reading online media, but vast majority of the population is still watching TV. And on TV, I am telling you, even though I know everything, I can't understand what they're saying. Like I'm watching a primetime show and like everyone's screaming at each other and like I don't know.
Oh my God, I'm tired
happening.
of this culture of people yelling at each other on news channels.
You're tired of it now? We live in the
It's
age
been
of
going
spin.
on for a long
we
time.
live in the age of spin, whether it's India, America, Europe, whatever.
Does that mean?
Means that if you can spin information to suit you and the news anchor and the presenter and the producers, if you just display information a certain way, the same thing can be seen in the completely opposite light. And it's possible. And some people are just very, very fucking good at doing it. That's a problem.
And they also make it really long. Like, it's like, why would I watch a 1 hour thing where you're telling me 2 things?
Again and again.
That's like
no, you listen to me. No, you listen to me.
Yeah, it's like the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm like, is there another point? And then by that time, like 1.5 hour, my life is over.
And then you're like,
people are getting brainwashed.
3 episodes of The Office.
Just sitting and watching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you and Andre will be friends now. You all both love The Office.
Which one though?
Both.
Not this Indian one, na?
No, bad. I wasn't even counting the Indian one.
Guys.
But
don't be anti-national. We love the Indian Office also.
Hey, quick thing that I want to just say before we wrap up with our top tips is there is a difference between being a patriot and a nationalist.
Yes.
And I want to make that very, very
Please
clear.
tell Ayushi, stop abusing so much. You're going to keep beeping it out.
I've said it twice, which I think is, by the way, the most restraint I've showed in any episode.
And in this one of all episodes.
Yeah, I've said it so many times. Being a patriot is important. And I think when you're proud of your country and the people around you and your population.
A rich heritage.
Yeah, and your culture and your history, it does a good thing because you start working towards a common goal is to see the upliftment and development of all the people in your nation at large.
Yeah.
I mean, I think being a patriot is doing right by your country and countrymen.
Just being a good citizen.
Which
you
is
love
being a
your
good
country,
citizen.
you love your countrymen. It's being a normal human
and
being.
What's a nationalist?
I think what has happened with these words like national and anti-national.
But we should say what a nationalist is as well. Someone who just purely believes that your country is...
It's a supremacy.
Yeah.
Like you think that your country...
It's better than all countries.
Better than all countries, and sometimes in specific situations, certain sections of the society are better than the rest of the country. And they are the only ones who are
caring
the best,
about the country.
Yeah, the best. And India can be best only with them at the forefront. And that is... And I think the problem with this is this whole... left and right and all of this nonsense. They've co-opted these words to become so synonymous with, if I say nationalist, it's very, very clearly a right-wing person. And if I say like anti-national, so they're all the liberals and all the left-wing and all the comedians are all left-wing. And I'm like, he's telling a normal joke, man. He's not being left-wing. But...
So don't let these things be stolen from you by this IT cell, by the government, by whoever's working on behalf of whichever party. Like, you get to reclaim what a patriot means to you. You get to reclaim what Hinduism means to you, what Islam means to you, what being a Buddhist, a Sikh, all these things. You decide what that means.
That's really sweet, but also like very like dreamy.
I know, but
it's very idealist. But like,
no, but your appeal is right that if you get to decide, you know, something that we've spoken about earlier is that I'm so mad that as a Hindu, I feel like my faith system is being co-opted to become the arm of the law. And that's not right. I don't want that. And I think it's an abuse of our faith. And any faith shouldn't be used to become a weapon. You've weaponized it.
Debatable because history shows otherwise in general.
Yeah, I don't think it's the government that has...
No, guys, what I'm trying to say is that today when you become like, oh, I'm a Hindu. Like you see all these videos, right, of a lot of people like, I'm a Hindu, this is a Hindu nation. When you're a Hindu, you'll only do this. And like, no, cancel all. I'm also a Hindu. I do not agree with anything that you're saying. So stop bringing our faith into this and do not make it synonymous with this kind of hate. Because I don't think that that's fair. And I'm saying that's a personal thing that I'm getting irritated by because it's like the same, right?
Fair. Yeah,
I
get it.
People in other countries, there's so many examples of people who are from the faith of Islam. They say that like terrorism does not represent Islam.
Right.
And I want to say to you, like, I want to say the RSS does not represent Hinduism. Yeah, like it has taken it over.
Yeah,
but it shouldn't.
But it shouldn't. I think that it's like sometimes when you, like I saw you at the start of this argument where you were like, should I say this, should I not say this? I think that everyone has their right to their feelings also, right?
True.
Like I'm seeing a lot of like arguments online as well about like someone feeling something and not really saying this is what I strongly believe in, this is the point I'm trying to make, but they're like, oh, I feel like this thing, and then suddenly getting attacked. And that culture, I feel, is a deterrent to
getting engaged.
Like a conversation, like anything happening, like everyone's fighting with each other. What's the point?
The only person who's allowed to tell someone to not feel is me to Tash when she has too many feelings. That's it.
It's kind of steps on the point I was trying to make, but okay.
No, you don't understand. You're not here every week.
That's fair.
She has too many. But do we want to quickly... I have really enjoyed this conversation, I just want to say.
Good job, Ritz. You got Andre.
Yeah,
I'm just telling myself. Andre, thanks for coming.
But this also
not a wrap up yet.
On my own point, which was that all three of us sitting together just being like, yeah, we are all right, correct.
But no, Ayushi, I don't agree with that. We have spoken. I, for one, have learned through this 1 hour. And
yes.
I think that's just like, okay, no, we are discussing more important things now, then I'll get to my feelings.
Top tips.
Have we already reached there?
Yeah, we kind of have.
Oh.
So, this is Ayushi, Rytasha, and Andre's top tips for how to citizenship.
Andre, you go.
Yeah, you start.
As our expert.
Expert is a bit much, but okay, I think that first and foremost, I just want people to be... See, we've reached a point where we know things are happening in the country. Like I said, the atmosphere has changed, the air has changed. Whether you are aware exactly what's happening or not, you know something is happening. So I just want people to kind of read and learn, and again, this steps on the point of like the media being like garbage and like there's a lot out there. But if you have the access to these things, I would suggest like a balanced reading. If you are strongly associated with either end of the political spectrum, just read the other side. See what they're saying.
Yeah.
That being said, you're an educated, intelligent person who understands what propaganda is.
Yes.
Like there's a lot out there that will confuse you. So I would say whatever
it's
you're reading...
It's designed to confuse you.
It is. And it's very... I feel like the words are so similar that it might seem legit. So what I would say is just don't read one thing. Like read multiple. Read, learn, but also verify everything. I think you had brought up something about WhatsApp forwards, right? WhatsApp forwards are like...
Cancer.
It is just the worst thing ever. And I cannot believe that all our parents
It's the modern day plague, I would like to say.
How do they always believe it? Like, I just don't understand it. That being said, I really do think that India is a very young country. I do think that there will be ways to fool people. And I'm a very pessimistic person, but in this regard, I'm very optimistic. I do believe that we have the ability to see through the bullshit. Like to learn and to verify and to read more and to kind of understand the issues. I really do like your point of, talking more with people who have different political leanings or different ideologies and stuff like that. That's something I'm going to, try to do a little bit more. I do think that like with all the protests happening and with all the issues happening across the country, I would urge people to do their part, to share verified information and to kind of, if possible, come for protests. I do agree that it's very dangerous in certain parts of the country. So I would let you take your call wherever you are.
Yeah.
But say, for instance, in Bombay, like honestly, it's not that difficult to come to a protest.
And they've been rather inspiring from our experience.
It's like a beautiful party of like...
No, let's not call it a party.
No, but it's like a very different feeling. Like you go there and you genuinely like... I have never felt... It's weird to say actually, but I've never felt more Indian than being at that protest with a sea of people from all kinds of faiths, different locations, different identities. And it's just... It makes me feel a little hopeful from the whole day of looking at really bad news.
Yeah.
Like, so I think, my prime thing that I've been saying since the start of everything is just don't be apolitical anymore. There's no room to just be like, oh, I'm not a politics person, yaar. These are not issues I care about.
Andre, I asked you for one top tip.
Ayushi, shut
sorry.
up. But I have to say, I'm also guilty of
my
this.
My top tip is awareness.
No, but
Please,
this explanation was very necessary for that is awareness. I think that's the main one.
Yeah.
We're going to hang our tent pole on it. Tash, yours.
Oh, no. So what Andre was saying, it's not a time for us to be like, I don't know, I'm not a politics person, which is basically who I am.
Who is a politics person? Seriously.
Ayushi likes to read about politics, so I would say you are a politics person, Ayushi.
Fair enough. You're aware of politics. You're understanding of politics.
Oh, okay, like that.
So my top tip would be to other people like me. You take a deep breath in and you take a deep breath out, and you prepare yourself and you try to learn as much as you can, which is basically Andre's tip also of reading and engaging in a peaceful manner. I firmly believe that human beings have a lot of evil in them, but there's also a lot of good inside every person. And I don't know if it's enough for us all to individually even just like try to, despite everything, tap into that good and always try to operate from a place of that. And it's not just about you and your family and your privilege and your life not being affected. That care needs to extend, because again, if we zoom out to a very universe spiritual perspective, I firmly believe that everything and everyone is like one. I don't think there's any separation from any of us in this room right now, let alone the country, let alone the world, let alone the universe, if we were to zoom out that much.
Oh dear.
So that would be my tip. Like, let's all try to operate out of a place of goodness and kindness and collective growth, and try to think about everyone, not just yourself. Now Ayushi's saying she doesn't have a top tip because I gave such a nice speech.
That's true.
That was a really good one. I actually, sorry, I have one more.
Are go for it.
I love
so
it.
I think that one thing that I've been doing, that I've trying to do is, again, everyone will be affected by this at different levels.
Yeah.
But there will be those affected way more than others. And like, I think that for people who have access to the internet, who have like large social followings and stuff like that, or even if you don't, I think it's very important to amplify the voices of those who will be strongly affected by it. So amplify the voices of the trans community, the marginalized community, amplify the voices of the people in the Northeast, people who don't have access to the internet, people who can't necessarily say what they want, because we spoke about like families and families having different political leanings. I feel like it's really sad that kids can't really say something online, because on Facebook they're followed by like a bunch of aunties, and like on WhatsApp though they can't say anything because like how can they
cancel aunties in general.
So I think that's one thing. And like the second thing is, for everyone, however smallly you're dealing with this, I think it's very important to like rest and rejuvenate yourself. I think that we're throwing ourselves into a very long haul, and it's really important for people to just take a breather, visit therapists. I think this is something that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Where it's so much, because you have this feeling of like tension and just mental unease.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, like, I do this every few days, where I'll just not engage with anything unless it's like obviously like massive news. But just if it's sharing of protest links and stuff like that, I'll take a break for a day, just so that I can get some
respite.
Very important, because now if one were to burn out themselves, then how can you be of service in any way?
Yes, that's I mean, yeah.
Drinking her tea. I can hear you gulp.
Sorry about that. I mean, I think you guys covered it pretty well. Awareness is key. I think that's my top tip would be to reiterate that, is that constantly find ways to make yourself more aware of the entire argument, left, right, center, whatever it is, because that makes your opinion on a personal level way more concrete, and it crystallizes a lot of issues for you. Something that I want to go, just picking up where you left off in terms of this rest day thing. Anyone who listens knows that I'm not like, I've never been comfortable with like therapy and stuff, but that's like a personal thing that I'm working on to work up the courage to go, and as opposed to leeching off Rytasha therapy sessions, which I find just so much fun. I think what I would like to say to everyone is we're in this for the long haul.
Right.
This is not just a today, tomorrow, next month issue. This is something that's going to, we have to take this on for a really long time, because it's not just about the citizenship. It's not just about religion. It's not just about these politics. It's about the economy. It's about women's safety. It's about the climate change. It's about making fundamental decisions towards a better future. And your idea and my idea of the future might look different, but we have to get to a place where some common goals are indisputable. So, yes, there is this quagmire that we're kind of swimming in right now, which is, it's got a lot of socio-political terms being thrown in from, like your religion and your rights and your constitutional this and all this really fun stuff. But there's a huge, way bigger plan at play. Stay aware. Stay vigilant in a way, because...
Like Mad-Eye Moody says, constant vigilance.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
But it is about that, because there are things that are going to affect us and the generation and our children and our grandchildren on a far larger scale than just this.
Yeah.
So you're right about don't burn out now, but keep the conversation going. Like the flame of that conversation should not be extinguished, because if that goes away, we're going to lose a lot more than just this traction.
Yeah.
So I would request people to do that. And, for the love of God, you are not better, you are not smarter, and you do not care more than anyone else. The minute you start thinking that, you have created a divide and a distance between you and the person next to you. We're in this together. That might be simplistic, it might be reductive, and it might actually trample on a lot of things that we've said before. But I do believe this. Yeah. We are in this together. We have to see everyone better at the same level, at the same scale, and at least get some semblance of the same opportunities. So if that is a common goal that we're working towards, I would urge us to not give up on that. Do not give up on people that have voted or think differently from you, because then they have the equal right to give up on you.
Yeah.
And I think that's painful. So that's my plea. And I think I hope you guys have liked this episode. It was really nice having you on.
This was great. I hope it reaches a bunch of people that will...
Yeah, they're like 6 solid people who listen.
Ayushi, please give ourselves more credit than that.
But thanks, Andre, for coming, man. This has been
Thank you so
really
much
fun.
for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And we will all try to do better.
By each other.
And
yeah.
Thank you for listening, friends, as always. We love you.
And I hate to end on this, but we have to.
Oh, wait 1 second. Before we go, Andre, any parting words, any publications that we can read and stuff? Any tips like that? Also, I would like to ask you.
There are a lot of, Instagram accounts that you should follow.
Okay.
Because they give you a lot of information and stuff like that.
And you're going to put them on a story tomorrow when this episode drops out?
Yes, I will.
We'll share a list of these.
I will provide places that are a good source of information.
Amazing.
And if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts in the IVM network. You can also listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, which I urge you to do because I love you, I am at Just Ayushi on Twitter and Ayushi89 on Instagram.
Where can we find you on social media, Andre?
Oh, I'm at Borges on Twitter and at Borges.Andre on Instagram.
Spelling?
Borges.
Got it.
Andre, Andre. And if you want to reach out to me, I am not on Twitter, thank God. Dodged a bullet there.
I don't let you forget about Twitter, though.
And I am at RYTASH on Instagram. Okay, thank you, bye.
All right, bye guys.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance. From stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
घड़ी की टिक टिक के बीच अब वक्त हो चुका है टपरी पे मिलने का, चाय या कॉफी के साथ टपरी टेल्स सुनने का। सोचिए, अगर आपकी मम्मी, अक्का, दादी, नानी, जीजी, आजी भी आपके साथ इस चाय की टपरी पे एक चुस्की लेने आ जाए तो कैसी बातें होंगी? उनकी कहानियाँ कितनी नई या पुरानी होगी। एक्चुअली ना, टपरी पे पहली बार ये उनकी जुबानी होगी। तो मिलिए इन नए किरदारों से हर गुरुवार टपरी टेल्स पर। चाय की प्याली, एक नई कहानी विद माधुरी अडवाणी ऑन IVM Podcast app, website or wherever you get your podcast from.